Today is a double feature, and for those of you who are probably closer in my age, you know what a double feature is. When I was young and going to the movies with my dad, it was more normal than not in my younger days, younger being 10ish, maybe 10 and under, maybe definitely less than a teenager. And we would go to the movies, and it would, I would say 95% of the time, be a double feature for, $2, two and a quarter, two and a half. I think that's probably dating myself right there. But we would go see the double features, and sometimes when you had a double feature, there would be a, what did they call it? Sneak preview, sneak whatever. And so you'd get 3 movies. So you'd be in the movie theaters for like 5 hours. You'd go at 7, 6 o'clock at night and get out at 10 or 11 o'clock or even later. In fact, I remember seeing Cheech and Chong Up in Smoke, so look that one up, and that'll give you an idea of when double features were the norm. But now you go to the movies, and it's more like going to the movie. You just go see a movie, unless you sneak into the adjoining theaters. When you go into a large mall that has like 10 or 15 movies on at once, you get out of a movie and then you jump into another movie that's either already begun or somewhat in play. But the days of double features are long gone. So that was my long-winded soliloquy into the double feature of today's video. And I don't know what sequence I'll publish these in, so you might be wondering, WTF, what's he talking about? But I just did the ammo storage, and now I'm going to talk about this product. And kind of like the Barry's ammo bins, I found this one by mistake too. I was poking around Hornady's website, and the reason I'm poking around Hornady's website is because I'm waiting for the new version of this to be unleashed. If I can get it out without throwing everything out of the way. I'm waiting for the new and improved version of this, which if you go on their website, it looks really, really cool. So it's a complete redesign. This has been semi-reliable, a little flaky at times. And speaking of flaky, it all comes down to the powder. So depending on what powder is being used, and hold with me here because this whole video is about powder. Depending on what powder is being used, it meters sometimes better than other times. So as I was poking around Hornady's website to look at the upgraded, I think they're calling it the Auto Charge Pro now, whereas I think this is just called the Auto Charge. I accidentally stumbled, and I love accidentally stumbling on things that I seemingly can't live without, or at least interested enough to give a try. So this is called the Hornady LnL Powder Drain Insert. And when I was building the Dylan XL750, one of my complaints, there's actually a long list of things that I'm less than satisfied with on how they implement it, but again, to each his own. Chevy, Ford. I'm used to the Dylan, and on the Dylan lock and load, when I'm done with my loading session, I will pop the powder measure out from, and we'll do this on video here. I'll pop it out from the bushing, and I'll just dump powder into a canister with a funnel, and I'm done. And I air that out, and I'm good to go. I was kind of expecting the same thing with the Dylan, and if you get a quick release, you kind of can do that, but then if you have powder in your powder measure, it's going to go everywhere. So the only way I found to empty the Dylan powder measure was to remove the whole tool head, which is akin to the lock and load. But there's another company whose name escapes me. It's not entirely Crimson this time. And they make an insert out of, I don't know if it's 3D printed or CNC'd and something like a Delrin, like entirely Crimson. But it does the same thing as this. But it's a big process to remove your powder bar. A lot of steps, especially if you have the safety fail-safe bar in place, and you're loosening a couple things, and it's just not designed to do that. So it can be done, but it's not really designed to do it, to remove powder from the powder measure while it's installed in the unit. And I'll say this is an afterthought as well, because the Hornady isn't really designed to do that, but this is, in my opinion, a much more elegant and faster solution. So I will shut up now and set the press up, or at least move the camera to the press, and you can see what the heck I'm talking about. Back in a minute. Okay, this press hasn't been shown in probably a long time. I want to say I did a video a couple years ago on different type of press mounts, and this is one of them. This goes back probably 7 years now when I did this, and I actually got this idea off of Ultimate Reloader, Gavin. I think it was called Gavin Tube back in the day, when he was newer to the tube. And he had, in his old basement or his old shop, a very sturdy, and he had the plans too at one point, because this is actually based off of his original plans with my changes. But it is a dedicated mobile stand for the lock and load, and it's on special wheels, hospital bed wheels that lock, and when you lock them, they lock from rotating as well as turning, whereas a lot of other wheels will only lock in one direction, but they can still, they won't turn, but you can still rotate the casing. So these are heavy duty locking casters, hospital bed casters, and the post is 4x4, 4-inch by 4-inch steel tubing, and it's got a 5x8 plate on top, and the Hornady is dedicated mounted, so this isn't going anywhere. And you'll see at least another video of this, because I've got some ideas for change, and I don't want to spoil the surprise, but you'll see that soon enough if all goes well. But back to the whole powder. So normally, and we'll even load powder. So this is my go-to choice for a standard 1-pound can, a stir. And what I'll do is take advantage of my Hodgdon Easy Pour. And since the camera and the tripod are kind of in the way, this lock and load does not have the strainer, because I bought the last one on entirely crimson. So again, in the past, I would cup the top of the funnel. Let's see, can you even see that? So far away, I have trouble seeing it. Yeah, you can see that. So in the past, I would cup my hand and do this kind of stuff, as I said before. Sometimes I'd throw a funnel in there, and that's a pain in the butt, because you're in a hurry. But let's try this. So obviously it's slower than if you were to cup this by hand, but I'm not in such a hurry that and that would probably be enough for a single loading session. So the point being, very fine control over your powder. So I'm going to take that off, put the cap back on, because this is all about emptying powder, not so much storing powder. So again, I do my reloading session, I do blah 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 blah, and I'm done. And let's say now I needed to unload all that powder. So normally I'd pop this out, take this over, and I won't demonstrate right now because we still need to do part 2, and I would put this over the funnel, take this off, and pour directly into my powder canister to store it. So this new insert, and I'll do a close-up, in fact, let me move the camera around. So this insert, the Lock and Load Powder Drain Insert, replaces the micrometer. So I will move the camera and we'll get set up and we'll see how that works, because I've not done this yet. All right, so you're going to see this live real time. Pull this out of the package. And I've got my canister ready. In fact, what's nice is this actually fits quite nicely in a bin that I've got hanging off the side with my inline fabrication dual bin, so it's not going anywhere. And I've got my funnel. So I'll put the funnel in, my powder ready to catch this. And I believe, and naturally the camera's a little bit in the way, so I tried to move this as much as possible, but I'm hoping it's as easy, and Murphy's Law says that because I have, I'll put that there, because I have the powder. All right, that now is locked. So as soon as I drop this, I'm thinking we're going to get a whole bunch of powder into, and look at that. So it's slower than the funnel to pour the powder, and takes a lot more time than what I would do if I was pulling this off and dumping it, doing this essentially, but by doing it from the top of the powder measure instead of the insert. So I'll call this just a creative option of doing this. So the beauty here is it's just like, and that is what I would call pretty dry. And normally I would then take air supply, compressed air, and blow that out to make sure there's no powder in here. But because I'm doing this and we have nothing coming out there, I would say that that works. So interesting, boy, but you don't want to forget to take that out, especially when you're putting powder in. So I'm going to say that that's a nice little addition to the bench. Not sure how much I'll use it, but I think it was like $11.99. And on Amazon, free shipping with Prime. So again, you can't beat that. It's made out of aluminum, and it's not a high-end piece. It weighs, next to nothing. And let's see if I can get that in back correctly. We're good. So it's an easy fix. The machining is okay. Let's see if you can see some of that. I mean, not the best, but it does what it's supposed to do. It's a funnel, a powder drain insert. So here's the actual product, and I would call that a thumbs up. Everything I seem to get is a thumbs up. Actually, I'm pretty honest in my review. So, I just noticed there's a shit ton of powder that is down here too. So, interesting little product. More to come. All right, as I signed off, I happened to look down, and there's not a shit ton. There's probably 3 cases worth of powder and some on the ground a little bit. And my first thought was, where the hell did that come from? And I'm going to guess that there was powder in the throat. So as soon as you put the insert, it fed powder as it was going to load a shell. So you've got whatever little reservoir, kind of like a Lee powder measure, the old style powder measures that if you don't empty into a casing for a couple of hits with the ram, when you've turned the powder measure off, you're going to get a little powder. So I'm going to do the experiment again, but I'm going to put a case in here and see if that helps. So back in a minute. All right, so I have the ram up, handle down, because I have a case that is an old once fired case that has not been deprimed, so it is in the powder, and you can see that the measure, the insert is here. I'm going to now take this, pop that in. All right, that's in. And we're going to see what happens with powder when I drop this. In fact, that's in your way, so let me change the camera view. All right, so let's see what happens with real time when we drop this. So right now, I still have the case. I've got the handle, the ram handle dropped about, shell plate's about an inch. So the case is still in the mouth of the die as this empties out. So yeah, this definitely reminds me of the Lee process. And this is going to want to be hit a couple times, so I'm going to go back up, essentially tap the ram so that powder will drop. Go back up, another few taps. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe this is more work than it's worth, and as I pull the ram all the way down, let's see what happens with the case that I have. Okay, so that case has probably what's the equivalent of 2.5 charges worth. So in order to have a clean shell plate, let's see, I'll give you a shot of that. This was probably the same amount of powder or more spread across the plate as well as a little on the floor. So it looks like in order to really empty this, you want to have a case in the die, and that also makes it a whole lot easier to do this. Now that I've said that, to do this one-handed. Let me blow that out too, because that's been a while since that's been cleaned out. I can't say enough about compressed air on the bench. Honestly, that is, to me, the best thing since sliced bread. And we'll go back down. And let's see if there's any powder in here. No. A couple granulars. All right, so I don't know if that's worth all the mess as opposed to just pulling this out, turning this upside down, which is what I'm doing now. Dumping everything into my powder bucket, powder thingy, powder canister. Airing it out, and putting things back together. So we're going to call that 6 of one, 6 of another. It's an interesting little device. Lots of steps, just like the Dylan. Lots of steps. So for the Dylan, I would not mess with trying to take apart the powder measure bars and all the components that deal with that, just to pull this out. It's easier to pull this out, flip it upside down, dump it, and pop it in with the bushings, and probably the same with the Dylan and the tool head. So we'll call this, before I saw the dump powder, I was giving it a thumbs up, And now with the dump powder, I'm going to give it a neutral. All right, now we're done. Take care.